Well, a few weeks ago we thought about heroes, and we thought about what it means to be a hero. And after we had that talk, these sweets were snaffled very, very quickly here in the manse. But sometimes when we snaffle these sweets in these packs, we go through them in stages. Now, if I'm going to open them up, you can kind of see ones that we like and ones that we'll eat very, very quickly. My favourite ones to eat would be the 12s, and then the dairy milks. So these ones are my favourite. And Whispers are very good too, Whispers. And I like the crunchy bits. These are very good. And then once I've exhausted all of these, there's some that I just don't really like at all. I'm not very keen on fudgy things like double deckers. Not so keen on the cream egg ones either. I'm not a big fan of eclairs. I've only had one filling in my mouth and I don't really want to get any more fillings. And again, I don't like that gooey, hard eclair stuff. So that's not one of my favourites. But you know, once I've had my Whispers and my dairy milks and my 12s and my crunchy bits, once you take them all away and you're looking for some chocolate to have, you kind of surrender, don't you? And you think, oh well, I don't really like caramel, but there's no other chocolate in the manse, so we'll just have this dairy milk caramel. And then you might think, oh, I'll just have those cream egg twisted things because it is chocolate after all. And then you think, well, I'll just have the fudge and the double deckers, the things that I don't like very much, but it's chocolate. And if it was another brand of boxes of chocolates, it would be the Bounty ones. That would be the ones that will never get a preference in my hierarchy of sweets here, of these tasty morsels. And it reminds me of back at school when you're picking sports teams, and those that were the best got picked first, and those like the Bounties were stuck at the end, and eventually they had to be claimed by somebody. But how does God view us? Does he rank us like sweets here, thinking, oh well, the dairy milk, well that's the best, followed by the 12s and the Whispers and so on, and then leaving the Bounties to the last minute? Are they people that God treats as bounty and he doesn't really like it at all? Well, there's two verses of scripture that I want us to think about God's partiality. And the first story that we have comes in 1 Samuel chapter 16. And this is the calling on Samuel from God. And we read in verse 7 of chapter 16, the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on his height or on his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And that's something for us to remember. In many ways, Samuel was an unlikely servant of the Lord, still a child, still someone of no status or authority. Yet he was raised to be someone of utmost importance. And then in the Acts of the Apostles chapter 10, we read, Peter opened his mouth and said, truly I understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him. Truly I understand that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him. And here we understand that God does not judge us based on our nation, based on our type, or who or what we are. But God's judgment is really non-existent in that sense. God is looking for people who will fear him and do what is right and be acceptable to him. Maybe in certain cultures they see Christianity as a white person's God because they see that the followers of Jesus are in the West. But that's obviously not true, because Jesus himself was somebody from the Middle East and would have been most likely a brown person. And then we get on to a touchy subject of immigration, and people talk about people who are brown or black coming in and changing our British ways. And sometimes you do wonder, if you go to church in England, particularly in London and places like that, and thinking about London specifically, a lot of these churches would not exist if it were not for black and minority ethnic people. Something for us to think about. People say that ethnic minorities are coming in and making our nation less British. And they're saying that it's not a Christian country anymore, whatever a Christian country is, because a country cannot be Christian. Of course, Scotland and the United Kingdom are Christian nations constitutionally, but that is not what makes somebody a Christian. You know, we can have a Christian country, a Christian state, but unless someone's heart has changed, then there is no difference at all. And in many ways, in the same way that the Roman Catholic Church in Scotland has been influenced by lots of Poles coming into Scotland and reviving it, in the Protestant and Reformed churches, often Christianity and the so-called British way of life is being revived, quite bizarrely and ironically, by foreigners coming in. Yet God does not show partiality on someone's nationhood or their identity, but looks at them as brothers and sisters, and looks on them as people who have repented of their sins and are following him. And indeed, God's partiality is not based on any of these things, but based on us being brothers and sisters, being born again, and being in his kingdom. Something for us to think about, something that makes us maybe uncomfortable at times as we think about immigration, as we think about judging people and thinking about people who are not like us. Sometimes in church, we get people who are not like us in. Maybe it makes us feel uncomfortable. Maybe we don't like it. But ultimately, God shows no partiality. And God sometimes uses the most unexpected of people to do his work for his kingdom. Things for us to ponder in this time ahead.